At my engagement party, my parents created a scene. My dad yelled, "Hand over your $50,000 wedding fund to your brother right now, or this engagement is done." When I stood firm and refused, he slapped me so hard I staggered back. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You're about to get a surprise you'll never forget." Moments later, the police walked in. My dad froze in shock because, picture this, the perfect engagement party, surrounded by loved ones, a dream evening finally unfolding. And then, your own father slaps you across the face. Can you even begin to imagine that kind of betrayal? Why? Because I dared to say no to handing over my life savings to my financially irresponsible brother. What the hell happened next, you ask? Well, let me tell you, it was the moment my entire world came crashing down, and then, slowly, beautifully, rebuilt itself. My name is Cassandra, and I was 27 when that happened. I'd spent 5 long years, working extra shifts as a pharmaceutical researcher, meticulously saving every single penny for what I thought would be the happiest day of my life, my wedding. All while my parents endlessly bailed out my older brother, Tyler, who honestly, was a black hole for money. That night, what should have been pure joy, transformed into a nightmare of family pressure and shocking injustice. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, we looked like the quintessential American family from the outside. My dad, Robert, was an insurance salesman. My mom, Karen, worked part-time. And then there was Tyler, the golden child, who could do no wrong in their eyes. Me? I was the responsible one, the planner, the saver. And that dynamic? It was set in stone early on. My parents, bless their hearts, were just terrible with money. They lived paycheck to paycheck, even with decent incomes. Credit card debt was just a normal part of our lives, and I remember hearing their hushed, angry arguments about bills late at night, thinking we were asleep. They even refinanced our home twice just to stay afloat. Tyler, being years older, watched and learned. By 16, he'd maxed out his first credit card, one my parents had co-signed. They paid it off. By 18, he'd wrecked 2 cars. They replaced them. By 20, he dropped out of the community college they were paying for. My parents called it finding his path. I called it a disaster waiting to happen. Watching that endless cycle, I swore to myself at 18, I would never live that way. The summer before college, I worked 3 jobs, waiting tables in the morning, stocking shelves in the afternoon, and doing data entry at night. Every single penny went into my education fund. My parents, who had paid for all of Tyler's failed attempts at college, simply told me they had nothing left for me. So, I applied for every scholarship I could find. I worked throughout college, maintained a 3.9 GPA, and graduated with my pharmaceutical science degree with minimal student loans. I was so proud of that. After college, I kept living frugally. I shared an apartment with 3 other women, drove a meticulously maintained 10-year-old Honda, packed my lunch every day, and tracked every dollar. My coworkers probably thought I was insane, but I had a plan, a vision. I wanted security. I wanted a future where I wouldn't lie awake worrying about bills like my parents did. And yes, eventually, I wanted a beautiful wedding and a home with the right partner. So, for 5 years I saved. At least 30% of every paycheck went into that account. By 27, I had managed to save $50,000, specifically earmarked for my future wedding. Meanwhile, Tyler bounced from one get-rich-quick scheme to another. Multi-level marketing, day trading with 0 experience, flipping houses with no construction knowledge, and eventually, some shady investments. It was a never-ending carousel of bad ideas and worse outcomes. 3 years ago, I met Michael Bennett at a pharmaceutical conference. He was a software engineer, brilliant and kind. Unlike the men I dated before, Michael respected my financial boundaries. He never pressured me, never made me feel extreme for my discipline. He understood my need for security and even admired it. When our relationship became serious, I was completely transparent about my wedding fund. He was so touched that I had been planning and saving so diligently for our future, even before I knew him. He started contributing to the fund himself once we were engaged, but the bulk of it, the foundation, was all from my years of careful saving. Then, 2 months before our engagement party, Tyler's latest venture, an energy drink business, collapsed. He'd somehow accumulated $70,000 in debt. I later found out my parents had already given him $20,000 from their retirement savings, but even that wasn't enough. They were tapped out, drowning in their own credit card debt and a second mortgage. I started noticing Mom calling more frequently, making casual small talk before subtly mentioning how stressed Tyler was, or how unfair the business world could be to innovative thinkers like him. I recognized the pattern. They were setting the stage to ask for money, but I never imagined how far they would go. We planned our engagement party at the Westbrook Garden, a truly beautiful venue with elegant fountains and twinkling string lights. I paid the deposit myself and spent weeks coordinating every detail. Michael's parents were flying in from Oregon. Our friends were coming from across the country. It was supposed to be perfect. The day of the party arrived with perfect weather. The Westbrook Garden looked magical as the early evening light streamed through the trees. The fountains created a soothing backdrop. The fairy lights I'd painstakingly strung were ready to twinkle. Caterers laid out gorgeous appetizers with little signs I'd calligraphed myself. Even the blue hydrangeas and white roses in the flower arrangements perfectly reflected the aesthetic I'd envisioned. Michael and I arrived early to make sure everything was in place. He looked so handsome in his navy suit, and I felt beautiful in a cream-colored cocktail dress I'd splurged on. We walked through the garden, hand in hand, stealing kisses and whispering about our future. In those moments, everything felt utterly, perfectly right. Michael's parents, David and Elizabeth, arrived first. Elizabeth embraced me immediately, telling me I was already like a daughter to her. David, more reserved but equally warm, shook Michael's hand before pulling him into a hug. They presented us with a small, wrapped box, Elizabeth's grandmother's pearl earrings, something blue. I was so touched by their thoughtfulness. My parents and Tyler arrived about 40 minutes later, just as other guests were beginning to fill the garden. My mother hugged me stiffly, her eyes darting around the venue, almost calculating its cost. My father gave me a quick peck on the cheek before immediately cornering Michael's father to talk about the stock market. Tyler stood awkwardly, looking uncomfortable in a wrinkled button-down shirt that was clearly too small. "Nice party, Cass," Tyler mumbled, not quite meeting my eyes. "Must have cost a fortune." I ignored the implication and offered to show him to the bar. As we walked, I noticed him checking his phone repeatedly, anxiously glancing at our parents. Something felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was my engagement party. I refused to let family tension ruin it. Over the next hour, I mingled with our 70 guests, accepting congratulations and introducing Michael's family to mine. My college roommates had driven 3 hours. My colleagues from the lab presented us with a beautiful crystal vase. My childhood neighbor, who had watched me grow up, dabbed tears from her eyes, telling Michael how lucky he was. But every time I looked for my parents, they were in deep conversation with Tyler, always in different corners of the garden. My mother's expression grew increasingly distressed. My father kept checking his watch and downed 2 scotches in quick succession. Tyler paced and gestured emphatically. Something was definitely wrong. "Is everything okay with your family?" Michael whispered when we had a moment alone. "They seem agitated." I sighed. "I'm not sure, but whatever it is can wait. Tonight is about us." At 8 p.m., Michael clinked his glass for attention. The garden fell silent as he began his toast. He spoke about how we met, our first date where he spilled wine on my white blouse, and how he knew I was special when I just laughed it off. He talked about our shared values and dreams. Then, he got down on one knee again, even though we were already engaged, and asked me to marry him in front of all our loved ones. The crowd erupted in applause as he slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me. For that perfect moment, everything else faded away. I was happier than I had ever been. After the toast, our friends took turns sharing stories and well wishes. Michael's best friend recalled how Michael had called him after our first date, certain he had met his future wife. My best friend, Heather, shared how she had never seen me as happy as I had been these past 3 years with Michael. The joy in the garden was palpable. As the night progressed and dinner was about to be served, I felt a firm hand on my elbow. My father was steering me toward a small alcove, away from the main party. My mother and Tyler followed closely behind. Michael was across the garden, deep in conversation with his college roommate. "We need to talk," my father said, his voice tight. "Now." The look in his eyes made my stomach drop. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to be good. I allowed myself to be led to the secluded corner, already feeling the happiness of the evening beginning to slip away. "Cassandra, we need your help," my father began, his voice uncharacteristically humble. "Tyler is in serious trouble." I looked between them, my father's forced smile, my mother's tearful eyes, Tyler's sullen expression. I had seen this tableau many times before. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, already knowing where this was heading. "The business fell apart," Tyler said, staring at his shoes. "I owe some people a lot of money. Like they're threatening me kind of money." My mother stepped forward, clutching my hands. "Sweetie, we know about your wedding fund." The pieces clicked into place. A cold feeling spread through my chest. "No," I said firmly. "Absolutely not. Just listen," my father said, his tone hardening. "Tyler needs $50,000 to pay off these guys. These aren't people you mess with. He could get hurt." "And what about my wedding?" I countered, pulling my hands away from my mother's grasp. "The one I've been saving for since before I even met Michael? You can have a simple wedding," my mother suggested, as if she was offering a reasonable compromise. "Or postpone it a year while you save up again. You're good at saving." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Good at saving? "I've been saving for 5 years, Mom. 5 years of extra shifts and skipped vacations. That money is for my future. Family comes first," my father said, his voice rising slightly. "Tyler would do the same for you." I actually laughed, a short, bitter sound. "No, he wouldn't. He's never saved a dime in his life. And he's never paid back a single loan you've given him." Tyler's face darkened. "That's not fair, Cass. I've had bad luck." "Bad luck?" I scoffed, my anger starting to bubble. "You've had nothing but chances and bailouts. I worked for everything I have." I could see a few nearby guests beginning to notice our huddle and the rising tension. Heather caught my eye from across the garden, her expression concerned. I gave a small shake of my head, not wanting to create a scene. "Look," I said more quietly. "I'm sorry you're in trouble, Tyler, but that money is spoken for. Michael and I have already put deposits down on venues. We've been planning our life together." My father stepped closer, lowering his voice to a dangerous whisper. "These people Tyler owes, they're serious businessmen with connections. If he doesn't pay, they'll come after him. They might come after all of us. Is your fancy wedding worth your brother's safety? Worth your mother's peace of mind?" The emotional manipulation was so transparent, it made my blood boil. "If it's that serious, go to the police," I retorted. "We can't," Tyler interjected quickly. "There are contracts. I signed things." Of course he had. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice even. "My answer is no. I'm not giving you my wedding fund. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have guests to attend to." I tried to step around them, but my father blocked my path. I noticed his face had grown flushed, and the smell of scotch was strong on his breath. "You selfish little princess," he hissed. "After everything you've done for me?" I challenged, my own voice rising. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad? You didn't pay for my education. You didn't help with my first apartment. You've never even asked about my career unless you needed to borrow money." My mother gasped. "How can you say that? We gave you everything." "No, you gave Tyler everything. I worked for what I have." By now, Several guests had definitely noticed the confrontation. From the corner of my eye, I saw Michael starting to make his way toward us, concern etched on his face. My father grabbed my wrist. "You listen to me. You're going to write a check to your brother tonight, right now, or this engagement is off." I wrenched my arm away. "You don't get to decide that. This is my life, my money, and my choice. You ungrateful little bitch," he spat, the words slurring slightly. "After all we've sacrificed for you." Several gasps came from nearby guests who could now clearly hear us. My mother was crying openly, making no move to defuse the situation. Tyler just stood there, looking both embarrassed and expectant, as if he still believed I might give in. "I'm not giving you my money," I stated firmly. "Not now, not ever. Now please, let's not ruin this night." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. My father's face contorted with pure rage. His right hand came up and swung toward me in a wide arc. The crack of his palm against my cheek echoed through the suddenly silent garden. The force knocked me backward, and I stumbled against the decorative column. The shock was overwhelming. My father had never hit me before. Not once in 27 years. My cheek burned, and I tasted blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. The entire party froze. 70 pairs of eyes witnessed my humiliation. Michael's parents stood with their mouths open in horror. Heather had her phone in her hand, and I realized dimly that she had recorded the whole thing. Michael reached us in seconds, putting himself between me and my father. "Don't you ever touch her again," he said, his voice shaking with fury. My father seemed momentarily stunned by his own actions, but quickly recovered. "This is family business. Stay out of it." I straightened up, touching my cheek gingerly. A strange calm settled over me. I looked my father directly in the eyes. "You're about to get a surprise you'll never forget," I said quietly. Then I walked past him toward the garden exit, pulling out my phone. Behind me, I heard my mother calling my name and Michael telling my father he needed to leave. I heard Tyler trying to defend our father, saying I had provoked him. With trembling fingers, I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's calm voice contrasted sharply with the chaos unfolding behind me. "I'd like to report an assault," I said, my own voice surprisingly steady. "My father just slapped me across the face at the Westbrook Garden, in front of 70 witnesses. I'm safe now, but I'd like officers to come." As I gave the dispatcher the details, I watched the scene in the garden through the decorative wrought iron fence. Michael was still standing protectively between my family and the rest of the guests. His parents had joined him, flanking him like sentinels. My father was gesturing wildly, his face purple with rage. My mother was crying into her hands, and Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear. The rest of the guests stood in awkward clusters, some openly staring, others pretending to be engaged in conversation while stealing glances at the drama. Heather broke away from the crowd and hurried toward me. "Are you okay?" she asked, showing me her phone. "I got it all on video. Every word, the slap, everything." I nodded, feeling strangely detached. "I just called the police." Heather's eyes widened. "Good. That was assault, Cass, in front of everyone." She pulled me into a hug. "I'm so sorry this happened." Michael spotted us and came over, his face a mask of concern. "The caterers are serving dinner to try to normalize things," he said. "My dad kicked your family out of the main garden area. They're by the front entrance now." He gently touched my cheek, which was still bright red. "We should get some ice for that." I leaned into his touch. "The police are coming." He nodded without hesitation. "Good. I'll support whatever you want to do." This was why I loved him. No questioning, no trying to talk me out of it. Just unwavering support. We could hear sirens in the distance. My father must have heard them too because he suddenly appeared at the garden entrance, my mother and Tyler trailing behind him. "You called the police?" he shouted, his voice slurring more noticeably now. "Over a little family disagreement? Have you lost your mind?" You assaulted me in front of 70 people, Dad, I replied, my voice clear and firm. That's not a disagreement. That's a crime. I barely touched you, he protested, looking around wildly as if seeking support. Tell them, Karen. It was just a tap. My mother looked torn, her loyalty to my father warring with what she had witnessed. Robert, you did hit her pretty hard, she admitted quietly. Whose side are you on? He snapped at her. 2 police cruisers pulled up to the curb, their lights flashing. 4 officers got out, immediately assessing the situation. I'm Officer Jessica Taylor, said the female officer who approached us first. We received a call about an assault. That would be me, I said, stepping forward. My father slapped me during my engagement party when I refused to give my brother my savings. Officer Taylor nodded professionally, taking out a notepad. And your father is that man there? I pointed to where my father stood, now attempting to straighten his tie and compose himself. Robert Mitchell. The officers split up, 2 staying with me to take my statement, while the others approached my father. I explained everything, from the history of financial manipulation to the confrontation and assault. Heather showed them the video she had captured. That's pretty clear evidence, Officer Taylor said after watching it. Would you like to press charges? I hesitated only briefly. Yes, I would. Across the way, I could see my father becoming increasingly agitated as the officers spoke to him. His voice carried across the garden entrance. This is ridiculous. A father can't discipline his daughter anymore. She's trying to let her brother suffer when she has the means to help him. One of the officers was speaking into his radio, and I caught fragments about visible intoxication and combative behavior. There's something else you should know, I told Officer Taylor. I had security cameras installed around the garden for the event. The venue manager helped me set them up because we have gifts and personal items here. They should have captured everything from multiple angles. Officer Taylor raised her eyebrows, impressed. That was smart planning. Can we access that footage? I nodded and waved over the venue manager, who had been hovering nearby. He quickly confirmed that the security system had been recording all evening and led 2 officers to the control room. My father's face when he realized there were security cameras was a mix of shock and fear. For the first time that evening, he seemed to understand the gravity of what he had done. While we waited for the officers to review the footage, Michael brought me an ice pack for my cheek. His parents assured me they didn't blame me for the disruption and were appalled by my father's behavior. No one should be treated that way, Elizabeth said firmly. Especially not by family. About 15 minutes later, Officer Taylor returned with her partner. The footage confirms your account, she said. We're going to take your father into custody for assault. As if on cue, the other officers approached my father, who had been sitting sullenly on a decorative bench. When they asked him to stand and put his hands behind his back, he exploded. This is insane. She's my daughter. I paid for her to be born. I put clothes on her back. You can't arrest me for disciplining my own child. Sir, your daughter is 27 years old, one officer said calmly. And striking another adult is assault, regardless of your relationship. As they handcuffed him, my father's face turned to me with a look of pure betrayal. How could you do this to your own father? For money? It's not about the money, Dad, I replied, loud enough for him to hear. It's about respect and boundaries, and the fact that you thought it was okay to hit me because I wouldn't do what you wanted. As they led him toward the police car, he suddenly blurted out. The debt collectors will come after all of us. They know where you live, Cassandra. They know where you work. Officer Taylor paused. What debt collectors would these be, sir? My father clamped his mouth shut, suddenly realizing he had said too much. But Tyler, perhaps seeing an opportunity to shift blame, jumped in. Just some guys Dad borrowed money from for my business. They're kind of in the gambling world. The officers exchanged meaningful glances. We're going to need more information about that, one said as my father was placed in the back of the police car. The reality of what had just happened began to sink in. My own father was being arrested at my engagement party. The celebration was ruined. And apparently, there was an even darker secret involving illegal gambling debts. My mother approached me cautiously, her mascara streaked down her cheeks. Please, Cassandra, drop the charges. He didn't mean it. He's just desperate because of the money. These men have threatened him. What men, Mom? What has Dad gotten himself into? She looked away. I don't know all the details. He's been borrowing to help Tyler, but also to cover some betting losses. It got out of hand. I shook my head in disbelief. So, this wasn't even just about Tyler's business failing. Dad had a gambling problem, too. It's not a problem. She insisted weakly. He just had some bad luck. The familiar refrain made me want to scream. Bad luck isn't a pattern that lasts decades, Mom. That's called consequences. As the police cars drove away with my father, and the remaining officers continued to take statements from willing witnesses, I looked around at the beautiful garden that was supposed to host one of the happiest nights of my life. The fairy lights still twinkled. The fountain still burbled peacefully. But everything had changed. Michael put his arm around me. What do you want to do now? He asked gently. I leaned into him, suddenly exhausted. I want to thank everyone for coming, apologize for the drama, and go home. This party is over. The week following my engagement party was a blur of police statements, tearful phone calls from my mother, and awkward explanations to friends and colleagues who had witnessed the debacle. Michael took time off work to support me, fielding calls and helping me process the shock. 3 days after the arrest, Officer Taylor called me with disturbing news. The investigation into my father's gambling debts had uncovered a pattern of illegal activity stretching back almost a decade. Your father has been involved with an underground gambling ring, she explained carefully. Not just as a patron, but helping to recruit new players and taking a cut of the profits. That's how he's been supplementing his income to bail out your brother's failed businesses. I sat heavily on my couch, phone pressed to my ear. Are you saying my father is part of some kind of organized crime? I wouldn't go that far, Officer Taylor said diplomatically. But he's definitely been operating in a gray area of the law for some time. The district attorney is considering adding charges of illegal gambling and possibly even money laundering to the assault charge. This revelation explains so much about our family dynamics over the years. The mysterious business associates who sometimes called our home late at night. The weekends when my father would disappear for sales conferences, but return with no materials or new contacts. The cash he always seemed to have despite our perpetual financial struggles. It all clicked into place, chilling me to the bone. More shocking revelations followed when my Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, called me the next day. I saw what happened on Heather's Facebook. She began, her voice full of sorrow. I'm so sorry, Cassandra, but I need to tell you something that might help make sense of all this. She proceeded to tell me that my father had borrowed $15,000 from her 3 years ago, claiming it was for my graduate school expenses. I had never attended graduate school. The money had likely gone to Tyler's failed food truck venture that year. I always wondered why you never thanked me for helping with your education, Aunt Patricia said. Now I understand you never knew. This call triggered an avalanche of similar revelations. My father's brother had invested $10,000 in a business opportunity that my father had presented as my first home down payment. My grandmother had contributed $5,000 to what she thought was a medical procedure I needed that wasn't covered by insurance. Even my cousin had loaned my father $3,000 for what he believed was a car repair after I had supposedly been in an accident. All told, my father had stolen nearly $40,000 from our extended family by using my name and fictional needs as a pretense. No wonder they had seemed so cold to me at family gatherings in recent years. They thought I had taken their money without so much as a thank you. I was devastated and humiliated. Not only had my father been stealing, using my identity, but he had also been tarnishing my reputation within the family for years. When I called each relative to explain and apologize, most were understanding, but the damage to our relationships would take time to repair. Meanwhile, Tyler was facing his own reckoning. With my father in legal trouble and my mother frantically trying to secure a lawyer she couldn't afford, Tyler was suddenly without his safety net. His creditors were calling, and there was no parental bailout coming this time. He showed up at my apartment unannounced 5 days after the engagement party, looking haggard and desperate. "Can we talk?" he asked when I opened the door. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in, leaving the door open. Michael was due back with dinner any minute, and I wasn't comfortable being alone with any family member right now. Tyler paced my small living room, running his hands through his unwashed hair. "This is all such a mess, Cass. Dad's lawyer says he could face serious jail time. Mom's a wreck. And these guys I owe money to are getting really impatient. What do you want from me, Tyler?" I asked tiredly. "I've already told you I'm not giving you my wedding fund." I know, he said quickly. "And I get it now. I really do. But maybe you could loan me just enough to make a good faith payment, like $5,000, just to buy me some time to figure things out." I stared at him in disbelief. Was he serious right now? After everything that had happened? "I'm desperate here," he exclaimed. "These aren't nice people, Cassandra. They started calling Mom, too, showing up at her house. Then go to the police." I suggested, not for the first time. "I can't." He looked genuinely frightened. Dad wasn't just helping me with money. He was introducing me to investors. Turns out some of those investors were using the business to launder money. If I go to the police, I could be implicated too. I felt a cold wave of realization. "Were you involved in Dad's gambling operation?" Tyler wouldn't meet my eyes. "Not directly. I just knew about it, and sometimes let them use my business accounts to move money around. I didn't ask questions." Oh my God! I sank onto my couch. "Our entire family is criminal. Not you," Tyler said with a hint of bitterness. "Perfect, Cassandra. Always following the rules." Before I could respond, Michael arrived with takeout bags. He assessed the situation quickly, setting the food down and coming to stand beside me. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his tone making it clear he was ready to ask Tyler to leave if necessary. Tyler was just explaining how he and Dad were involved in money laundering, I said, too exhausted for subtlety. Michael's eyebrows shot up. "I think it's time for you to go," he told Tyler firmly. "Fine." Tyler headed for the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I am sorry about what happened at your party. Dad was way out of line." He paused. "But you could have just helped family, Cass. That's what we're supposed to do for each other." After he left, I broke down in Michael's arms. The weight of all the revelations, the betrayal, the public humiliation, and the destruction of what family meant to me came crashing down at once. "I don't even know who they are anymore," I sobbed. Everything I thought about my childhood, about our family dynamics, it was all built on lies and manipulation. Michael held me tightly. "I'm so sorry, Cassandra. No one deserves this." Later that evening, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. "Your father's bail is set at $25,000. We don't have it. Please help us. He doesn't belong in jail." I showed the message to Michael, who shook his head in amazement. "They're still trying to get your money, just in a different way now." I turned off my phone and curled up next to the man who had stood by me through this nightmare. I need some distance from all of them, I decided. At least until I can figure out what kind of relationship is even possible going forward. The next day, I contacted a therapist who specialized in family trauma. As I sat in Dr. Rachel Simmons's office, explaining the tangled web of financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and shattered trust, she listened attentively before offering her perspective. "What you're describing is a dysfunctional family system that's been in place for decades," she explained. "Your father and brother as the takers, your mother as the enabler, and you as the responsible one who's expected to pick up the pieces. Breaking free from that system is difficult because it disrupts everyone's established roles. I just can't believe I never saw it clearly until now," I admitted. Sometimes it takes a catastrophic event to see patterns that have been normalized throughout your life. Dr. Simmons said, "The question now is, what boundaries do you need to set going forward?" It was a question I would spend the next several months trying to answer. The criminal case against my father moved forward with unexpected speed. With video evidence of the assault and multiple witness statements, the prosecutor had a strong case. But it was the financial crimes investigation that truly unraveled my father's life. 2 weeks after the engagement party incident, federal agents became involved, following the money trail from the gambling operation into various business accounts, including several connected to Tyler's failed ventures. My brother wasn't arrested, but he was called in for multiple interviews as a person of interest. Meanwhile, I threw myself into therapy with Dr. Simmons, meeting twice weekly to process not just the recent trauma, but the lifetime of manipulation I was only now recognizing. The clarity that came with distance was both liberating and painful. I always thought I was the problem. I told Dr. Simmons during our 4th session. Too rigid, too cautious, too unwilling to help family. But you were just responding to their constant taking. She explained. That's called gaslighting. When someone behaves inappropriately but makes you feel like you're the one with the problem. It's a common tactic in financially abusive relationships. I began keeping a journal, documenting memories that now appeared in a new light. The time my father borrowed my first tax refund check when I was 16, promising to return it but never did. The Christmas when Tyler received a car while I got a sweater. Because you're more practical and don't care about material things. The guilt trips when I couldn't attend family events because I was working extra shifts to pay for my education. Michael was my rock throughout this process. He never pressured me to reconcile with my family or to move on before I was ready. Instead, he listened, validated my feelings, and supported my journey towards setting healthy boundaries. I'd been thinking about the wedding. I told him one evening as we sat on our small apartment balcony. I don't think I can go through with the big celebration we planned. At least not now. He took my hand. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. We could postpone, have something smaller, or even elope. The important thing is that we're together. His understanding brought tears to my eyes. I think I'd like something small. Just us and a few close friends. Maybe your parents. I don't think I'm ready to face my family at a wedding. My mother continued to call and text daily, her messages oscillating between guilt trips. I can't believe you'd abandon your father when he needs you most. And desperate pleas. Please, we're going to lose the house if you don't help with his legal fees. I maintained minimal contact, responding only to provide basic updates about my well-being, but refusing to engage in discussions about money or my father's case. Tyler's situation deteriorated rapidly. Without my parents' financial support, and with his business connections now under federal investigation, he found himself truly on his own for the first time in his life. He was forced to sell his luxury car, move out of his expensive apartment, and take a job as a bartender to make ends meet. 3 months after the engagement party, he called me. Our conversations had been strained and infrequent, but his tone was different this time. I got a reality check. He admitted without preamble. My landlord showed up with an eviction notice, and I realized I had nowhere to go. Mom and Dad can't take me in. All my friends who I thought were so solid suddenly don't return my calls now that I can't pick up the tab. It's like everyone's gone. That sounds really hard, I said carefully, not wanting to offer false sympathy, but acknowledging a genuine struggle. Yeah, anyway, I found this studio apartment. It's kind of a dump, but it's what I can afford on my bartending salary, and I'm looking into night classes to get some kind of certification. I figure I need a skill that actually pays. That sounds like a good plan, I offered. There was a long pause. I never thanked you properly, he finally said, his voice rough. For paying for that lawyer consultation when Dad was first arrested. I know you didn't have to do that. I had forgotten about that. In the immediate aftermath, I had arranged and paid for an initial legal consultation for my father before the full extent of his crimes became clear. It wasn't much, but it was something. You're welcome, I said. And I'm sorry, Tyler continued. For everything. For the engagement party, for all the money over the years, for not seeing how hard you worked while I just took. I've been a shitty brother. It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of everything that had happened, but it was more accountability than Tyler had ever shown before. Thank you for saying that, I replied. Meanwhile, I reconnected with extended family members who had been victims of my father's schemes. My Aunt Patricia invited me to lunch, and we slowly rebuilt our relationship as she shared stories about my father's youth that helped me understand his obsession with money and status. Your grandfather was very hard on him about providing for his family, she explained. Nothing Robert ever earned was enough. I think he's been trying to prove himself his whole life. Understanding didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me contextualize it. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was beginning to process my feelings in a healthier way. Months after the engagement party, my father accepted a plea deal. He would serve 18 months in a minimum security facility for the financial crimes, with the assault charge resulting in probation to be served after his release. He would also be required to pay restitution to the family members he had defrauded and attend mandatory financial counseling and gambling addiction treatment. My mother was devastated by the sentence, claiming it would destroy what remained of our family. She had maintained her stance as my father's defender throughout the proceedings, minimizing his actions and placing blame on everyone from the prosecutors to Tyler's business partners to me for overreacting to the slap. Will you at least come say goodbye to him before he reports to prison next month? She begged during one of our infrequent phone calls. I considered it carefully, discussing the request with Dr. Simmons. I think I need closure, I decided. Not for him, but for me. The meeting at my parents' house was tense and awkward. My father looked older than his 58 years, his face lined with stress and defeat. My mother hovered anxiously, repeatedly offering coffee and cookies as if we were having a normal family visit. Thank you for coming, my father said stiffly when we were finally seated in the living room. Your mother thought it was important. I waited, hoping for an apology, an acknowledgement, anything that would indicate genuine remorse. But my father just sat there, looking uncomfortable and slightly resentful. Is there something you wanted to say to me? I finally asked. He shifted in his seat. I'm sorry things got so out of hand at your party. I was under a lot of pressure. It wasn't a real apology, just another excuse. I nodded, accepting that this was probably the best I would get. I hope the counseling helps, I said. And I hope when you come home, you'll have found healthier ways to deal with pressure. As Michael and I left, my mother followed us to the door. He really is sorry, she insisted. He just doesn't know how to say it. I know, Mom, I said, giving her a brief hug. Take care of yourself while he's gone. Okay? Focus on your own healing. In the car, Michael asked if I was all right. Actually, yes, I realized. I didn't get the apology I wanted, but I don't need it anymore. I know who they are now. I know who I am, and I know the kind of life and family I want to build going forward. That evening, we revisited our wedding plans. We decided on a small ceremony in a botanic garden with just 30 guests, including Michael's family and our closest friends. We would use part of my wedding fund for the celebration, put another portion toward a down payment on a small house, and use the remainder for therapy and building our new life together. Are you sure? Michael asked. That money was for your dream wedding. I smiled, feeling more certain than I had in months. Dreams change. I don't need a fancy party to prove anything anymore. I just need us, building something healthy and real together. As we finalized our new wedding date, I felt a weight lifting. For the first time since the engagement party disaster, I was truly looking forward to the future again. 6 months after the engagement party that changed everything, Michael and I stood hand in hand in the Riverside Botanic Garden, surrounded by 30 of our most trusted friends and family members. The October afternoon was crisp and bright, with maple leaves in vibrant shades of red and gold creating a natural canopy above us. I wore a simple ivory sheath dress that cost a fraction of the elaborate gown I had originally planned. Michael was handsome in a charcoal suit with a blue tie that matched the late-season hydrangeas in my bouquet. As we exchanged vows, I felt none of the anxiety that had plagued me in the weeks following my father's arrest. Instead, I was filled with a calm certainty that I was exactly where I belonged, with exactly the right person. Michael's parents had been incredibly supportive throughout our reimagined wedding planning. Elizabeth had helped me find my dress during a weekend shopping trip that became a healing experience in itself. David had insisted on contributing to our honeymoon, a week-long trip to a quiet coastal town rather than the European tour we'd originally discussed. "We're so proud of both of you," Elizabeth whispered as she embraced me after the ceremony. "The way you've handled everything shows what a strong foundation you have." My mother attended the wedding alone, dressed conservatively, and keeping mostly to herself. She had been making efforts to rebuild our relationship, attending 3 family therapy sessions with me and Dr. Simmons. While progress was slow, she had begun to acknowledge her role as an enabler in our family's dysfunction. "You look beautiful," she told me during our mother-daughter dance, which had replaced the traditional father-daughter dance. "I'm trying to understand your choices better. Dr. Simmons is helping me see things differently." My father, 2 months into his 18-month sentence, had sent a brief note of congratulations via my mother. I had read it once, acknowledging the small step it represented, and then tucked it away. His journey toward accountability would be long, and I was no longer waiting for his approval or validation. Tyler had surprised me by declining his invitation to the wedding. "I don't think I'd make things better by being there," he had explained during one of our now monthly phone calls. "I'm still working on my stuff, and this day should be happy for you." It was perhaps the most mature decision my brother had ever made, and I respected him for it. He had been attending Debtors Anonymous meetings and working steadily at the bar, even receiving a promotion to shift manager. Small steps, but in the right direction. After the ceremony, we gathered in the garden's glass-enclosed pavilion for dinner. The intimate setting allowed for genuine conversations rather than the superficial mingling of larger weddings. Heather, who had stood beside me as my maid of honor, clinked her glass for a toast. "I've known Cassandra since college," she began. "She's always been the most determined, disciplined person I know. But this past year, I've seen a new kind of strength in her. The strength to stand up for herself, to redefine family on her own terms, and to choose joy even after betrayal." She raised her glass. "To Cassandra and Michael, may your marriage be built on the incredible foundation of respect, honesty, and true partnership that you've already established." As applause filled the pavilion, I leaned into Michael's embrace, thinking about how differently this day had turned out from what I had originally envisioned. The elaborate venue, extensive guest list, and lavish details I had once thought essential had fallen away, revealing what truly mattered: commitment, integrity, and authentic connection. Some of my wedding fund had indeed gone to therapy sessions, both individual and family. Another portion had been set aside as a down payment on the modest 3-bedroom house we had closed on last month. The remainder covered this smaller, more meaningful celebration. I regretted none of these decisions. During the months of healing and rebuilding, I had connected with other survivors of family financial abuse through an online support group recommended by Dr. Simmons. Their stories helped me realize how common this pattern was and how difficult it could be to break free from family expectations, especially for women. I had even begun volunteering with a financial literacy program for young adults, sharing my experience as a cautionary tale while teaching practical budgeting skills. As the evening progressed and our guests enjoyed the simple but elegant dinner we had chosen, I stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The botanical garden was peaceful at dusk, with pathways lit by subtle ground lighting and the last rays of sun filtering through the trees. Michael found me there a few minutes later, draping his jacket around my shoulders against the October chill. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. I turned to look at him, this man who had stood by me through the most challenging year of my life. "Not one," I answered honestly. "I wish things had been different with my family. I wish my father had been the man I thought he was growing up." But I don't regret standing my ground. And I definitely don't regret marrying you today, exactly like this. He smiled, pulling me close. I'm so proud of you. I know this year has been incredibly hard. It has, I acknowledged. But it's also been clarifying. I know now that respect can't be bought. Boundaries aren't selfish. And real love doesn't come with financial strings attached. We returned to our reception where our chosen family awaited. My colleague from the lab had brought her homemade tiramisu instead of a store-bought gift. Michael's college roommate was teaching his grandparents how to do the Macarena, resulting in peals of laughter. My mother was engaged in what appeared to be a genuine conversation with Elizabeth, perhaps finding common ground as mothers-in-law. This was what family could be, I realized. Not perfect, certainly not without challenges, but built on mutual respect rather than obligation and fear. As Michael and I cut our small wedding cake, I thought about the journey ahead. We would build our life together deliberately, making conscious choices rather than following prescribed paths. I no longer felt the need to prove my worth through an expensive wedding or to earn my family's approval through financial sacrifice. The freedom in that realization was perhaps the greatest gift of this difficult year. Later that night, as we danced under string lights to our last song, I whispered to Michael, "Thank you for helping me learn what real family means." He kissed my forehead gently. "We're just getting started," he promised. And as our guests surrounded us with love and well wishes, I knew it was true. The family we would build together would have different values, different patterns, and different definitions of loyalty than the one I had grown up in. That family had been built on financial dependence, unspoken obligations, and the fear of saying no. Ours would be built on mutual support, honest communication, and the freedom to set healthy boundaries. The road to healing would be long. My relationship with my parents and brother would continue to evolve, with setbacks and difficult conversations alongside moments of genuine connection. But I had taken the first and hardest step, standing up for myself and refusing to participate in destructive patterns, even when it meant facing rejection and anger from those I had been taught to please at all costs. As we bid farewell to our guests and prepared to begin our married life, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for most of my life. The $50,000 wedding fund that had triggered so much drama had ultimately given me something far more valuable than the perfect celebration. It had given me the chance to redefine family on my own terms. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked as we drove away from the garden, our simple reception finished, our new life together just beginning. "I'm thinking that sometimes the hardest moments lead to the most important growth," I replied. "And I'm thinking how grateful I am that we get to decide what our future looks like, together." Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure for your own well-being? My story shows that setting boundaries, while incredibly painful, can lead to tremendous personal growth and healing. If this resonated with you, please share your experiences in the comments below. I really want to know what you think. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more stories about finding strength through difficult family situations. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes saying no to others means saying yes to yourself.